All right, guys, welcome back to another BroShoot podcast. Today we're talking about Rings of Power and House of the Dragon, kind of comparing the two, and if, even if they are comparable because they're such different shows. But yeah, shooting the shit on that. And Wells, what do you think? We'll start off with you. What do you think about Rings of Power so far? I have my own opinions, but I didn't want to hop in on them yet, just quite yet.
So, so after watching the first two episodes of Rings of Power, I was actually expecting it to be a lot worse than it is. Um, I don't think it's necessarily as good as it could be. I think there's some very kind of cheesy parts. One in particular that bothered me, but it's not even like it's not a really that big of a deal. But I'll get into that later. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that I could like at least enjoy watching it, have fun watching it. I thought I would be constantly reminded like how bad it is, but it's really not as bad as I thought. Doesn't mean it's perfect by any means, but I'll just say my expectations were so low that
Hey, that's the power.
yeah. But honestly, my low expectations have helped me enjoy the show more. I think because it's exceeded them just slightly.
How so?
Um, I think I'm kind of getting like lost in the world a little bit. Like I didn't expect to care that much. I don't think I care about the characters really at all yet. But seeing like Kaza Doom again, which you guys haven't seen that yet if you haven't watched the second episode. But basically where the dwarfs live, which is Moria in Fellowship of the Ring. You get to see like Moria and it's like um fully what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. Basically, Moria, whenever it was like the coolest dwarven city ever, and that part was really cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's better than I thought it was going to be.
What about you, Nikki? What do you think?
So, just to clarify, just to give you guys a little bit of exposition, I haven't seen the original Lord of the Rings in years. So, this is coming more from the perspective of someone who's maybe more or less watching Lord of the Rings for the first time or watching it again. And it's a good example of formulating your own opinion as opposed to just going online and seeing what other people think about it. I'm going to go ahead and agree with Wells that it definitely was not bad. I thought it was solid. However, in comparison to what I originally remember with the original Lord of the Rings, it's a little underwhelming because especially in the beginning, like when you saw they were talking about the war in Middle Earth and you had the war scene, the fight scene, I was like, oh, wow. And you saw the arrow go through the guy's skull.
Yeah,
And I was like, that was great. That was awesome. And I wanted to see more of it. Because, in the original Lord of the Rings, I remember the introduction when they're having that war with the guys with the bows and the arrows, and they're going like it just seemed like it was a lot bigger and a lot more epic. And I wanted to see the fight scene in the beginning a lot more, and then it just kind of all of a sudden stopped because it's giving you that exposition. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was bad at all. It was really good. But in comparison to Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones I thought was a lot better because I wanted to watch the next episode after seeing Game of Thrones. When I saw Lord of the Rings, I kind of watched the first episode and I was like, okay, that's good, but it didn't really motivate me to like want to see the next episode. But I only watched episode 1 of the Lord of the Rings because I wanted to make a fair comparison with the Game of Thrones one. The Game of Thrones one, it's got that classic like fighting for power and trying to hold the throne, and I really wanted to see what was going to happen next. But with Lord of the Rings, it was like the guy with the meteorite comes down, and I was just like, maybe as someone who hasn't seen the series in a long time, I was kind of like, well, who the heck is that? There was almost no warning, or there was no foreshadowing to who it was. Wells is smiling because he probably has an idea of who it is, but for me, I didn't know who it was, so I was like, I don't really care who that is. I don't know. It wasn't bad, but I wouldn't the bar was set so high for the first movie, I didn't really have an interest in watching the second episode.
So when he's saying Lord of the Rings and he's saying Game of Thrones, he just means House of the Dragon for Game of Thrones, and Lord of the Rings, we're just talking about Rings of Power.
It's because
So,
I'm a
yeah.
filthy casual.
Yeah. No, but I think everybody could pick up what you're putting down. So I'm going to disagree with both of y'all. I didn't think it was good at all. I thought it was boo-boo trash. The reason being is, well, there's a lot, but like you said, I was not invested at all. The world, I never got lost in the world. I was not immersed in the world at all whatsoever. I thought Galadriel, she's hopped around so much. It seemed like, to me, I couldn't really get invested in any set that she was on at all, because you kept hopping around. And Middle Earth is so big. What they did so well in The Lord of the Rings is you were following the hobbits on this long, long journey, this huge journey, and it took them a whole 3 hours, 4 hours to get to their destination at times. And this seems like, every different scene was a different location or different set. And I was just like, and by the way, each set seemed like it was in studio. The lighting, I was watching it with McClellan. She has no idea about Lord of the Rings. She goes, "This looks stupid." And I was like, "Why?" She's like, "Everything just looks too lit and too perfect." And I'm like, I mean, you're not wrong about that. And kind of also the soundtrack kind of sounded like Star Wars to me. I don't know if you guys picked up on that.
Actually,
Did not
dude, that's
like
crazy that you say that. Is like I was watching it, watching the second episode. I watched the first episode twice because my fiance was like, "All right, I'll watch it." And I was like, "Okay, well now I have to watch the first episode again." So I watched the first episode twice, and then the second episode. And during the second episode, I was like, "Dude, this sounds." There's this little like piece, and I was like, "This sounds a lot like Star Wars," because Star Wars is this thing like, let's say they're doing like a land like sweep of like with the camera, and when someone's like foot comes in, let's say it's like foot level, someone's foot comes into the shot, it'll go like bump.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
do that a lot, and they've done that a few times in Rings of Power. Which is, it's really cool in Star Wars. I like that, but I was like, that's kind of weird. Like,
Yeah, but
Lord
that's
of the
like
Rings kinda does.
I mean, that's coined by Star Wars. I feel like that's their thing. Well, another thing I was going to say before Wells rudely interrupted me.
Sorry.
I misspoke on what McClellan said. She said it looks too staged, too bright. Everything looks too bright. And I was like, yeah, I would agree with that. And she also said it looked too clean as well. And
Well, to be fair, I mean, they're trying to give you the false presumption that everything is at peace, right?
well, I mean, I know we're following elves here, so I definitely had to remind myself, we're following elves. These are like the most perfect beings there are, other than, angels. They're like almost angelic. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then even with the Harfoots, the little hobbits with the terrible Irish accents or whatever, I just thought it was kind of
Yeah,
I
the
don't even know
accents
what they're
throw me
going
off,
for
dude.
there, but I just thought it was kind of like, okay, so and each two of the female leads, like they wrote them kind of, especially with Galadriel, like, oh, these two are just trying so hard to be rebellious and kind of like this. It just seemed like it was really too forced, because we haven't even developed these characters at all yet, and they're already just like pushing against what they're supposed to be doing, So I just they're moving a little too fast for me, for my taste.
The best way I could describe it in one word, and I said this after I had finished watching Rings of Power, it just felt small.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, and that could be because they were trying to build a huge world with many different storylines in such a short amount of time. Because if I remember, Lord of the Rings it's pretty long. So and they do that because they want to show you what this world is like and how big it is. And when you got all these stories that are trying to, mesh into one, it's very difficult to do that in just basically, I don't know, an hour.
Yeah, I thought the Grey Haven scene was whack. Like when she was about to go into the Grey Havens, and she just like reaching out, and then she has a flashback to what her dad says, and then she jumps in the water. I just was like,
Wasn't her dad?
Who was that?
How's her brother?
Oh, talking to her?
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do you guys think that for someone who's probably never seen Lord of the Rings before, I think I know what you're going to say, Holt, maybe never seen Lord of the Rings before. Do you think Rings of Power did a good job at sort of bringing that exposition in for them to get familiar with and go, oh, okay, I understand what's happening, as opposed to being confused?
yeah, no, I mean, I think at the beginning when Galadriel's kind of doing, because they do this in the Lord of the Rings, like before every movie, they kind of set the scene and explain to you what's happening and the situation they're in. But I actually thought Galadriel did a really good job on episode 1, laying the groundwork for you, explaining why they went to Middle Earth, what their mission was there, and why she has to go back. I think they explained it a little too much.
So I kind of wanted to talk about a few points that Holt made, I think, about how clean it is and stuff, and like how well shot it is. There is kind of an explanation for that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just, kind of not the artistic style we want. But in Middle Earth in the Second Age is kind of like a Renaissance period, or like a kind of like the Roman, it's kind of like the peak of the Roman Empire as far as Middle Earth goes. It's like that equivalent of Middle Earth. There's not much war, as it has been centuries since a huge war taken place. So that's kind of why I think it looks a little clean, or that could be an explanation. But I also think, judging off of what they've done before in The Hobbit, and like even those fight scenes are like, it's not gritty enough. Like it's got to be more gritty. I don't know. That could be an explanation, but I doubt it. Like our doubts for a lot of modern stuff have like kind of.
They're not. I promise you,
true.
they're not thinking through a lot of this stuff as much as we.
Yeah.
One
you can
detail,
always fall back on, it was artistic choice. Like, you can always fall back on that.
I was going to say one detail that really bothered me, though, was in the beginning when they're, out in that tundra of snow and they're just walking through with like these like thin pieces of cloth, like no fur or whatever. And they're just they're going through and they're just like standing there like it's cold. And they're not shivering.
They're probably
elves like impervious to the cold.
Yeah. Well, the
Because if
elves,
it were me, I would be like with my sword just going like this the entire time with how cold it is.
yeah, it's not even that the elves are impervious to stuff like that. It's that usually their gear or whatever they're wearing is just usually has some type of magic on it, or it's so well made that they're not gonna get cold.
Dude, I just thought it was bullshit, especially when they're breathing. There's like a little bit of cold coming out of their mouths. But that's just little details like that. And if that's the case, then I guess I'm wrong.
I mean, there's a few things that are in there that are not even canon. Like why would you add stuff in there? God, I hate when people have loud trucks with straight pipes. Think that everybody around here has a.
It's the CIA.
Yeah. Anyways, with the Arondir and Bronwyn, that light skinned elf, and then Bronwyn or whatever, I don't even know what she is. I guess she's just a regular woman, but that's non-canon, and it just seemed like they forced that in there. Like they already had love interest. I don't know. All of it seemed a little too forced and stagey for me, but I like when I see development, and maybe there will be. I'll give it more of a chance because I'm not going to write it off just yet. But to me, and the reviews I think I saw that Amazon took down the reviews because the reviews were so bad, like they just couldn't withstand the bad reviews.
A little bit of it, I think. I don't think.
I don't think it was fair, but because you can't do that on your first episode. I think you have to let it, pan out a little bit. But I definitely agree with the bad reviews. But I wouldn't give a bad review so quickly,
Well, the first people that are going to review are going to be like they're hardcore or casual. They're going to be some hardcore Lord of the Rings fans, and of course, very critical of it. And that's absolutely their opinion. And I think that if, like you said, it probably would have been better if they just let it pan out. But I get it. You don't want to give people who've never seen the Lord of the Rings series a bad impression on it. Did you guys at all care about the main storyline with the blonde elf, trying to avenge her brothers? Did you first? Yeah, I see. That's it. The thing is, I didn't really care for her that much, and I forgot her name for that reason. Did you really care about her storyline?
Something I actually have a gripe with, like this kind of storyline that I've seen in the show already about a few times. So they've gone through a few different kind of races, like I guess all the races really of Middle Earth. And you'll notice a theme is that every like main character they've shown is a woman, and that's fine if you write them correctly. But usually in kind of like a hero's journey or in any kind of show, in order to like every single woman in the show has already done some heroic act. You haven't seen the second episode, so you don't know. But basically, Galadriel has defeated that snow troll. Which, by the way, that shot where she runs up with the sword, I was like, "What? This is so stupid."
And then the dagger.
I hated. I hated
I
the.
hated that.
I
I
hated the
hated
fight
that
scene
too.
so much. I did
I
not
hated
like
it.
I was like,
I tried to like it. I was like, oh, okay. Well, at least she killed something. And then I was like,
it looked like an Avengers fight scene. It's literally like Avengers. The lady who is in love with the elf.
Bronwyn.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that Bronwyn that lives in the Southlands, which is technically Mordor. Yeah, Bronwyn. She kills an orc in the second episode. Just cuts its head off. And all the men in the show are weak.
What about Nori? The
Nori takes care of
the proto hobbit.
yeah, Nori saves or takes care of the man who falls from the meteor.
Oh yeah, the stranger.
The stranger who I think I know who it is, but we'll get into that later. But they've all done something, and all the men are kind of like they're kind of except for that elf, and I guess Elrond. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but they just kind of seem like background characters, and they're definitely pushing that female-oriented main characters. It seems to me, but I could be wrong.
They've been pushing that sort of narrative for years now. I just think, and there's no one that says, or you can write a strong female character if you really want to, if you do it the right way, but you don't have to write a strong female character by demeaning all the male characters, making them look weak to make them look stronger. You don't have to do that. But I understand I understand what you're saying. I don't know. I just didn't really care for her character that much. There was just something about it I didn't like.
Yeah,
I didn't care.
I think at the end of the day, it was the pacing. Everything, like I said, everything happened too fast. Like you didn't care that her brother was killed by Sauron. I mean,
I didn't.
Yeah, like because it happened so quickly. Like, why do I even give a shit? I mean, we moved so fast. It just seemed like I couldn't get invested in wherever she was at. Even when she was in what's it called? I think I have it written down. Or Forojoith or whatever. When she was climbing up that wall, I was looking at the map trying to make sure I knew where they were at, and she just hopped around so much. I couldn't understand or wrap my mind around the set. I just could not. I'm a big, I want to get invested in the area that they're in. I just was not invested in any of it. So
that is true, because something I noticed, I feel like I know the Middle Earth like orientation of Middle Earth pretty well. They were doing like a really cool animation with the map, but
they only did it once. They only did it once, though. I think
they did it a few times.
Oh,
it helped. It didn't really help me that much understand where they were, because the animation was cool, but they're doing it from like a weird, like really low sweeping angle, instead of like getting like the bigger picture of the map. So I'm kind of like, whoa, cool.
That was another reason why it felt small. Yeah. I will say too, just from like more of a casual perspective of watching Lord of the Rings, for some reason while I was watching it, I really wanted to see some kind of I almost wanted to see some kind of Gandalf character introduced. I mean, not Gandalf, but like some kind of wizard or mage character, because in the original Lord of the Rings, I mean, you had people from all these different walks of life. You had the dwarves, you had the hobbits, you had the humans, elves. Elves, the elf was Orlando Bloom was great with archery, and then you had Gandalf, who was a sorcerer, he was a mage, he was a wizard, and they didn't have that in there. And I was like watching, I was like, I wanted to see some kind of I wanted to see more of that magic.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll bring.
But I wanted to see in the first episode.
I'm with you. It's. I mean, it's not going to be the same Lord of the Rings, so I'm not going to sit there and keep comparing it. One more thing that I'll say that I thought was funny. I was watching it with McClellan, like I said, and she said we were watching like Elrond and Gil-galad and all them kind of just sit there talking to each other, and she's like, why do they look like that? And I was like, what? She's like, I don't know. I just can't take them seriously. Like, why are they talking like that? I'm like, that's another point, because it's, but that's kind of how elves are. They just they talk in a specific tone, and the way they talk and move and navigate sentences. It is a little hard. It's hard to take them seriously.
It's almost stoic. Like they're very stoic. And that's what I was watching her and I went, I'm like, is she intentionally doing that, or is she like a bad actress, or is she just being stoic? And then I realized after
it could come off as bad acting. Yeah, it could come off.
That's what I thought. I was like, I was watching her making these acting choices, and I was like, I don't. But then you have to remember, as an elf, and they're different than humans, and they're very stoic. And I remember that from the original Lord of the Rings, and I went, okay, I have to take that into account. So, yeah, it just felt small. It was underwhelming. I really wanted to see a longer fight scene in the beginning, and the theme that's done over and over again. Someone's family member dies and she wants to go avenge them. That's fine, but it's felt very generic. I wanted to see them do it in their own way.
Yeah. About like the whole wizard thing that you've said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So wizards are sent to Middle Earth in like a very specific way.
Okay.
In a way that you've seen in the show. To give you a hint. So,
am I missing something?
So
he's talking about the stranger that came.
The guy that came in the meteor is a wizard.
Well, see, I wouldn't have known that then, or anyone who hasn't seen it in a while. Yeah. Well, that's the reason. Again, the reason why I only watched the first episode is because I wanted to give, House of Dragon a chance. I didn't want to watch 2 episodes and then only watch 1 episode, because I was looking at it more from the perspective of, if I watch this introduction, is it going to make me want to watch the rest of the series? That first episode is so important. You got to bring, like, if you watch, and this is off topic, but if you watch Mr. Robot, I always tell people, I say, watch the first 5 minutes of it. If you are not interested, don't even watch it. That was a show where you could watch it in the first 5 minutes and you go, I am hooked. Lord of the Rings, I watched the whole entire first episode and I kind of went, okay, that was Rings of Power. I watched Rings of Power, within the first hour, the whole hour watching it, and I was like, okay. I mean, that was cool. I mean, it wasn't bad, but I'm gonna go watch Game of Thrones, or I'm gonna go watch House of Dragons.
House of the Dragon.
Whatever.
This is kind of confusing. It is.
Yeah, it is, because now there's so many different, like, 4-letter, 3-letter.
You guys know what I'm talking about. We're not talking about the whole series. We're talking about those 2 new episodes that came out.
So, as far as like the stranger who lands in the meteor, just to actually like talk about something fun about the show.
Okay.
Who do you guys think it is?
It would make sense that it would be. Well, the thing is, and I would say it's like Gandalf or something, but to me, we did talk about this. This is a few thousand years before. This is the Second Age, so it's a few thousand years before the Third Age. And how we talked about Gandalf, he's what, 20-something thousand years old? Wells?
Yeah, but that's a calculation, because
this would make him like a 2,000-something years old. And
yeah, but I think that calculation comes from I don't even think Middle Earth is that old, because that's a calculation that comes from I think it comes from him saying, you know, when he defeats the Balrog, he lives like 1,000 lifetimes,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and then
When he dies and he
yeah,
resurrects. Yeah.
yeah, he's like
So I'm guessing it's Gandalf then.
so in the second episode, he writes a symbol on. He's writing these symbols on these rocks, and he doesn't really know how to speak like very well. It's very frustrating whenever people put characters in shows like that can't speak. I'm like, dude, just like spit it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, he writes the same. I believe it's the same symbol that he writes on Bilbo's door to
For the dwarves.
for the dwarves. I think it's that. I believe it's the same symbol. So I'm like, wow. Gandalf. They couldn't just
Come up with a new character.
Yeah, it's Gandalf, but I mean, of course, it's a different actor. It's not Ian McKellen, but
Oh, that's gonna be more whack.
I think it's Gandalf. I could be completely wrong. Dude, all right, here's something that would be cool. I don't think it is what it is. I think it would be cool to see Sauron, like before he, you know, took the path of darkness. But I don't think that's what it is.
Did they start? Did they start making the rings yet?
No.
Yeah.
What do you mean? On the second episode, they hinted at that the first episode.
No, they haven't started making the Rings of Power yet. No, Sauron. You mean?
No, the guy. So
I meant Saruman, by the way.
Yeah.
Earlier when I said the
Yeah.
wizard, I meant to say Saruman, not Sauron.
Sauron's already alive, so I didn't really. But I was gonna let you go with it.
No, I meant to say Saruman.
No. At the beginning, Gilgalad was talking to Elrond about the ringsmith, the builder. He started talking about the rings and how they're going to build or how they're going to make them, or something like that.
But he doesn't make the rings.
Okay, well, I guess we'll
Sauron. Sauron forged the rings of power.
I'm just saying I don't know what's going to happen. I just heard that
they the smith, who I cannot say his name because his name is kind of complex. The smith takes Elrond. It goes to where the elven smiths live. It's a whole city, which looks absolutely amazing on screen. But he basically wants to build this insane forge, and it has to have. It's so powerful. This forge to create these weapons and stuff is so powerful that it has to be in its own tower. So basically, that's kind of he's a master smith, but he doesn't want to make jewels anymore. He wants to make an actual building to be remembered by, something so insane that everyone will remember him. And that's how he doesn't know who can build it. So Elrond takes the smith to Khazad-dûm to see the dwarves, because the dwarves are master smith, which is pretty cool. That part was pretty cool, but you haven't seen it yet.
So what would you guys have done if you had creative power to, take it, and if you could change maybe the first episode, what would you change probably in your way to make it better? Would you rewrite the entire thing, or would there just be specific details that you would add in or take away? What would you do?
You mean to go, Wells?
Yeah,
I want Holt to go because he's just gonna roast every. He's gonna roast.
No, I mean I would have made it so much more personal. I guess more. I would have slowed it down a lot because they're trying to do. It seems like they're trying to do way too much. Let's slow this down, man. Let's write a good character,
Game of Thrones style.
Mm-hmm.
Slow it down like that.
Yeah, well, Game of Thrones, yes, Game of Thrones. So I would have picked or written 4 really, really good characters, and characters that we would really enjoy following. And I would have probably Galadriel's she's awesome, but the way they wrote her is she's almost insufferable, because you agree that she's avenging her brother or whatever, but she's just being a contrarian, it seems, she has no explanation of why. She does have explanation. She does talk to Elrond for a while, but I just don't feel like they've put these characters in situations to where I can resonate and side with them, So I probably would have put some more, before it seemed like it was this huge decision on her not going to the Grey Havens was almost like a impulse decision, and they probably should have done that maybe third, fourth episode. So slow, like that way, it's there's more at stake. It just seemed like, oh, who cares if she goes to Grey Havens? It's not that big of a deal at this point because you don't really care. What I would have my style choice would have been a lot different. I would have shot it completely different. I would have shot it with a different style, a lot less light. I know these are elves, but it just doesn't seem like the Lord of the Rings or the Middle Earth that I know. There's not enough grittiness. It doesn't feel. It's too much in studio. Wells and I talk about that all the time. There are a few shots that are on set, but for the most part, it's too much in studio. So I would have minimized that to my best of ability. I know it's hard to when you're making a world that doesn't exist as fantasy, but there are practical ways you can do it.
Something they did, like this is very specific, but something they did, I was like, man, I'm not really there, was that snow scene because they didn't do Lord of the Rings did this so well, and it's just the most simple thing you can possibly do, and with $1 billion budget, it would be like a drop in the pan. Just get a helicopter, and you go and fly to the mountains. You get the very snowy peaks, and like let's say like you could put with what Prime has or what Amazon has, you put weather effects on it to make it look like it's very snowy and brutal. But you're kind of like they kind of just take you right into the CGI ice wall they're climbing up, and I'm like, this place doesn't seem very real to me. And they get to the top, and like there's those they look out, and there's Sauron's like little buildings that he's put up or whatever. I'm like, I don't know, like
it's very
bothers me.
dreamscapey. It does have that dream feel to it. And just in defense of the first episode, I understand that they were trying to portray Middle Earth, that everything was at peace, so they might have made it a little too brighter than usual because they wanted to make it seem like everything was okay in the beginning, and then of course the darkness comes over, and then the black stuff comes out of the cows' udders and stuff like that to make everything dirty again. But I agree. I really wanted to see more practical effects. And with House of the Dragon, I mean, even with the jousting scene, that was all, right there. You had all the people there. You had real horses. You had real jousters. To me, that looked great. And I really was invested in that scene, especially with the throne and everything in it. I don't know, man. Watching House of the Dragon, I was really invested, and I wanted to see the next episode.
I agree with you with House of the Dragon. Every time they do anything with Game of Thrones, even if you've seen the latest episode, which you haven't, I don't know if you've seen the third episode.
No, not yet.
They're going on a hunt, and you can see what's it called? The way they shot it is they're like maybe 10 miles away from what's it called, Wells?
King's Landing.
Not, I was gonna say Castle Rock, but it's not. And you can see it in the background, so you're like, okay, you have a reference point of where they are. Now with Lord of the Rings, they didn't quite. They just, I'm gonna throw you into this set or this scene, and hopefully you can kind of understand where we're at. There's no reference of anything, and they did that really well. And the Lord of the Rings too, where they give you a reference point. Okay, hey, here's where you're at. You're coming in this way, and then it just was seamlessly done. Another thing that I would have changed was the dialogue. Everything just seemed too perfect. There was no conflict. There was a few conflict within the dialogue, but to me, what made Lord of the Rings and even Game of Thrones dialogue, it just seemed like it was written in such a way that it seemed like a natural conversation. And it was a little more light with Lord of the Rings and even The Hobbit. It's like there's some jest, there's some, they joke around a little bit. But this has just seemed like a little too stoic. There's not enough fun happening. There's just.
And you
only
yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, go ahead.
The only but the only really civilization that I think they did a decent job with, and the accents are bad. Like I can picture myself there was
Harfoots.
Hardfoots, because
Yeah.
you get kind of that valley and they're in the bushes. I assume they're like in those kind of like small trees and bushes in the middle of that valley there. And I'm like, okay, I'm there. That works. What I didn't like about some of the stuff, and I suppose Khazad-dûm works as well, but some of the elven cities, I'm like they do the wide shot of the city, boom, you're in the city. I would kind of like them to do like a wide shot and then like kind of like a medium shot into like kind of where they
Yeah.
are in the city, and then go into those
That's
like
what you're
tighter
supposed to do. You're
shots.
supposed to do
Yeah,
a super wide establishing shot, medium, medium close up, then tight. Like that's just, and then kind of hop in and out from there. I mean,
yeah, like,
it's a stylistic choice again, but I think that was just a lazy decision,
but
honestly.
it's good for world building. It's really good for
Yeah.
that. And so something that House of the Dragon, it does. I mean, Game of Thrones has always done this. Like when they're up in the Red Keep, like I know exactly where they are. They're on top
Yeah.
of that. They're at the very far edge of King's Landing on the cliff, the tall building. You can picture them like where they are, um, in the when they go into like the slums in the Flea Bottom
Yeah.
in Game of Thrones. They don't do it in House of the Dragon yet, but like, man, I can just picture where they are in the city right now, and it just really helps my imagination. And something that also Game of Thrones gets helped by is they film actual cities, or at least King's Landing is an actual city, other than the Red Keep and stuff like that. But that city's real. It's in Europe, and a lot of the stuff they film is in Europe and Spain and England and stuff like that. But that really helps them out, and it's just like Lord of the Rings. I'm looking at a really cool city, but the city's completely CGI, and with Elven um, architecture, you're not gonna be able to find a city that looks like that. But with like human cities, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but you can still have sets that are familiar, like
Yeah,
because what they do and Lord of the Rings, like you go to Hobbiton or whatever. Yeah, I know that's a real place, but like there's sets that you can familiarize yourself with and feel comfortable in. Like, oh, on especially in Game of Thrones, they do this a lot. Like you said, there at the Red Keep, but they shoot a lot of scenes at the Iron Throne or wherever. So like you're like, okay, I know where I'm at. I like, it's just it does help your imagination a lot. I like how you said that because you don't realize when movies are doing it. You just know when they're not doing it.
that's
Um,
very true. That's so
Practical
true.
effects always trump CGI when it comes to you feeling like, oh, this is really happening, like this is real. Just to tell you quickly, so I'm looking up the runtime for the first two Lord of the Rings movies, and the first one was 2 hours and 58 minutes, and the second one was 2 hours and 59 minutes. So basically 3 hours.
yeah.
That's a lot of time to world build, and that is something that's realistic. When you try to cram all of these different races into one world and to bring all this exposition in one episode, that's basically it was an hour. It was just a little over an hour long, right?
Yep.
When you try to do that, you almost shoot yourself in the foot. And
Yeah.
I can't remember how Game of Thrones, and when I mean Game of Thrones, I mean the original series. I can't remember how they were able to do all of that world building in like the first episode, but doing just focusing on House of the Dragon just on one house makes it so much easier for you to make a personal connection with the storyline, and gives you an opportunity to really invest yourself and sit in what's going on.
I'll
I
say
think.
this. Sorry, Holt. Can I go ahead real
No.
quick?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Uh, honestly, I agree with you, Nikki, but I also um think they owe it to the world to take as much time as possible. Like you dived into this, you got into this Lord of the Rings world. You owe it to the world to make it as kind of what's the word, like kind of as realistic to the viewer as possible. And Game of Thrones was painfully slow at points, like, but it was all worth it until season 8. It was all worth it for the wait. So like a lot of the stuff they did, they could have done in 2-3 episodes, but considering the fact that they would kind of kind of in order to make the viewer care about something, which is why, like you said, Galadriel, who gives the shit about her, quest to avenge her brother.
Mhm.
And you don't even really know who Sauron is if you're a new viewer. It's like, why would you care about
Right.
Sauron anyway? I think they kind of owe it to the world to, not be lazy and kind of do what me and Holt were talking about, more practical shots, more establishing shots, and more world building with the camera and how they set up where they are, because I think it's kind of like lazy to assume that the viewer is just going to be, just because it's Lord of the Rings, and I really do think they kind of think this, they're going to be like in this world and believe it's real, because we love Lord of the Rings and a lot of it is kind of hard to believe. And I mean, I know it's magic and all that stuff, but the reason that we like Harry Potter or like Game of Thrones and stuff is because like you do get stuck in the world while you're watching it. And you're like, wow, this is like actually happening.
And it's a trope that a lot of when they're writers, when they're trying to write off of something that was already made, like like say Harry Potter, for example, they think that just because that they can put this title Harry Potter, that they're gonna go, oh, they think they have the privilege of saying, oh, it's Harry Potter, no matter how we write it, people are gonna love it just because the title's there and it's Harry Potter, right? Which is not true. You have to at least meet at the level where the bar was set for the original series. And I totally agree with you. Me personally, if I were doing the first episode for Lord of the Rings, I would solely focus on I would just focus on one race, at least for that episode. It gives you the time, like you said, even if it's painfully slow, it gives you the time to sit in as opposed to bouncing left to right and not really investing so much in, like, what was it, like 4 different races that we watched in one episode?
At least the bare
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah, and you can talk. It's solely focused on the elves. The elves can still, in the dialogue, talk about the different races and like what the state of affairs are and what's happening. And you can obviously maybe another new character in the next episode. Maybe not, but I agree. I really do think that they shot themselves in the foot by not really taking their time with each character, or at least each race.
I would, if you think, and I think you're right, Nicky. But what I would say is, and I keep going back to this, but if you remember how Lord of the Rings was shot and why this was such an amazing film or films trilogy, was every time that they revealed a new part of Middle Earth, it was a grand reveal. It was
Mhm.
like it took them probably 8 hours to get to Mordor, and when they finally got there, it was like a grand reveal. Like it was just epic. It was big. Same with it took 5 hours to get to Rohan. When they got there, big reveal. So like same with Helm's Deep. Same with the Mines of Moria. It took them 2.5 hours to get there. And when they finally got there, it was just like even when they got there, it took them a while to like actually get inside and show the halls. And so they need to put more emphasis on like how important it is for us to see these big reveals and get invested into the set that they're on,
Right.
because you can't. And you mentioned Harry Potter, and I was actually going to mention that earlier. Everywhere in Harry Potter they go, they did such a good job of immersing you in whatever set they're on. I mean, Hogwarts, like of all the movies, I would say Hogwarts is probably the I would want to go there the most. And those aren't even my favorite films, but just the way that, I mean, you had 7, 8 movies to really establish Hogwarts, but like to me, I just you can't underestimate how important it is to like Will said, is to build those worlds, because I don't think they've done a good job at all
You
with
can't
that.
be lazy just because someone else wrote it before,
Yeah.
and then you figure, oh, well, people are just gonna, we can be lazy. You can't be lazy with it. You have to, and it takes time. It takes time to do something like that and to write that.
Yeah. And earlier, I don't want to go back on what I said. I still think that there were times that I did find myself kind of like actually sitting there and watching it without this over the critical lens that I have about the show, which was what surprised me is like I kind of did for like about a 10 to 15 minute span of each episode was like, wow, like got lost into the show. Especially the second episode does a really good job of this. Actually, I think if you once you guys watch it, you'll be like, that's a little bit better as far as like, establishing the cities and stuff that they're going to. But yeah, I just think that, like I said earlier, you kind of have to, you owe it to Tolkien and you owe it to, the fans to kind of not take it for granted, I suppose, and do the best work you can as far as like this is an entire show. Like we don't know how many seasons of this there's going to be, and they're kind of already like, I don't know. It's kind of lackluster in how they do the world building, but some of it I did really like. Some of it I didn't like. I couldn't through. I was never invested in the show throughout the entire hour and 6 minute. The first one was hour and 6 minutes. I don't know how long the second episode was. I wasn't like. There's parts of the show I was like, oh, that took me out of it, and there's parts of the show I was like invested in.
Too fast, man. Too fast for me. But so with that being said, let's switch over to House of the Dragon. Now this is different, and it's apples to oranges here, but similar. I mean, these are both fantasy, both somewhat of like a middle-age feel. Like you have swords, magic, arch. I mean, you just have all that awesome stuff that we love, and I really enjoy. And I thought, after hearing all the reviews, this is going to be way better than Game of Thrones. And I'm always very hesitant when I hear reviews like that because most people don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I watched it, and I kind of had high hopes for the first episode of House of the Dragon, and it wasn't bad, but I didn't think it was anywhere near Game of Thrones. And I'm going to give it time. It's more. I will say this is better than Rings of Power, and I'll get into the details of why I think that. And I think it's kind of what it ties into what we've been talking about this whole time is they're developing these characters and you get a lot of face time with each character. It's not hopping around. We're only really following Targaryens, which I kind of liked following a bunch of different houses. I liked in Game of Thrones how you had, Targaryens, Baratheons, Starks, Lannisters, like you were following all of those, but now you're just harped on one bloodline, and there's pros and cons to that. But and they know, and as well said, they know how to write a female lead a lot better than I think Prime does, and so does HBO. Or HBO and Game of Thrones just do a really good job of that. And I'm really invested in the princess's story, and kind of at this point who she's going to wed and if she's going to take power. They've just done a good job of drawing that out and really get you invested in that storyline, Now, the battle scenes with Daemon, all in all, it's been pretty good. I'm going to give it some time. But, Wells, what do you think?
So you can't really compare it to Game of Thrones because when you can compare it to whatever you want.
What else you can compare it to? That's the thing.
But I just think that like one thing I've noticed is going back to kind of Rings of Powers, I am definitely in this show. It's nuts, man. Like people talk about budget all the time, and I was like this like when I first heard about the Rings of Power, but I was a lot younger. I mean, I think I was still a teenager, but Rings of Power or the House of the Dragon definitely shows that there is not as much of a budget in the show as Rings of Power. Yet it does a better job in the character building and in world building. And even though they have the success of Game of Thrones and they have, that as kind of their way to like promote the show, I suppose, they are actually trying to make a good show. It feels like to me. And they're not using Game of Thrones as like a way to sell it. Probably a little bit. I mean, why would you not? But take advantage of that. But I think they're actually doing a service to the world. And I think, like you said earlier, the King's Landing in the hunting scene, how you can see King's Landing in the background. It's just like little things like that are like they just sell it. Like you know where they are. But so far, I think that there's some pretty cheesy moments to the cheesiest moment of actually. There's only one real moment I didn't like that much, and it's when Damon takes on about like 50 to 60 dudes,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
you're led to believe
"What?"
this villain's supposed to be like the guy. We don't even get to see the battle scene or the fight scene between Damon and the crab feeder, or whatever his name is, which is kind
I
of
thought that
whack.
was weird too. I thought that was really
Yeah.
odd.
Well, I mean, when we watched him, we're like, oh, this is actually a pretty well done villain. Like, it's creative. I've never seen a villain quite look like this. You hadn't heard him talk. There was some mystique to his character. Um, but I think they missed the mark on that one. That battle scene was, I thought it was trash, and I really didn't understand the importance of the stepstones and why they needed to have control over it. The war kind of just seemed, uh, it just seemed pointless, and we only saw one battle scene from it, and then so they had 2 years they were fighting this battle in the stepstones, and then all of a sudden Damon gets pissed. First of all, they have dragons. If you can't win with dragons, what are you doing? And then Damon gets pissed, and all of a sudden he's able to just kind of take on this whole army by himself when they defeat him in one fell swoop. It just seemed a little unrealistic, and I know it's a show, but I just couldn't. It couldn't wrap my
Yeah,
mind around
I
that.
think Game of Thrones and like the show, they never really did in 8 seasons of the show. They never did, from what I remember, a 1 man versus 50 man fight
Yeah,
scene. Like everyone always had help.
yeah,
Like they took on like maybe 4 at once, and it was like they would barely win.
yeah.
They never did like this 50. Dude, I
I
was like,
don't. Yeah, I'm
"You're
not. I'm with you.
already
I
doing
don't
that?"
like giving people OP power like that. I mean, it just
In a world
seemed.
that doesn't have that kind of stuff either.
Yeah,
Like Game of Thrones is definitely out of all the fantasy. I mean, you have dragons, but it's just people like us riding on the dragon. Like
yeah,
Targaryens aren't all they have. They do have the ability not to get burnt and stuff like that, but that's it. Like you can cut them, you can stab them all they want. They're not like faster than. It's not like they're elves or anything. And he takes on like 50 of them, and I was like, I just also something I
it's
want to
hard to get
comment on.
invested in battle scenes like that.
Yeah,
It's just like there's nothing at stake. If he's able to take on 50 people out by himself, it's like, oh well, you're not even really. And he gets shot by 3 arrows and still able to just walk around and go kill the
yeah, dude.
crab. Like,
That was not. I don't know what that's about,
Dude,
dude.
I'm telling you, I really wish that opening scene from Rings of Power, the battle scene, I just wish that they made that a little bit longer. Because, I mean, they had some really cool practical effects in there. You guys are laughing at me because I'm not even talking about.
we're talking about
No, I
something
know,
that,
but I'm just in my mind, I'm thinking about the whole, like, while you guys are talking about the battle scenes, I was just thinking about the Rings of Power battle scene, comparing it with that. I'm like, man, I just wish that they
well,
made it a little bit
that was
longer.
more so just a flashback. I understand because they kind of did that the same thing with the original Lord of the Rings. Yes,
Their
they,
Lord of the Rings version
That's
was
what
better,
got you,
dude.
but that's
yeah,
what
oh
you,
for sure, it was way
yeah,
better.
but that's what got you into the whole. That was a great opener for the movie. I mean,
Yeah,
hell, the whole movie is
yeah,
about war anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
anyways, what were
I
you
was
gonna
gonna
say?
say something about dude. There was I expected it to be a little bit more visually like a visual upgrade on Game of Thrones, but there's one thing I noticed that was just it was really bad, like really pretty bad, almost terrible, and it was every single shot of the close-ups of people riding on um the dragon and stuff. I'm not an expert on like VFX, but the compositing and stuff they did on the characters. If you look back and notice like why it's off, the lighting on the characters that are riding on the dragon does not match the lighting that's in the shot, and it looks just so bad. I thought it was just whack. It looked whack to me.
I'll touch on that too. I thought it was funny. I saw a meme, or maybe it was just a comment. It said, "Oh man, the editors sent it over the footage in log again. They didn't color grade it because it kind of looks like everything's shot in log because everything's got a little bit, has a little fade to it,
Yeah, it's like yeah,
and it's some and maybe it was just the TV I was watching it on, but it seemed like some scenes they pushed the blacks so hard, so like the blacks were there was no information within the blacks, but then obviously everything else. I mean, in every scene they're pumping in a bunch of haze, so they make it look kind of like a little bit hazy. Which I mean, I think it's shot really well, but there is a certain look to it that some people might find off-putting.
Yeah. Also, dude, like the show does. I don't want to keep comparing it to Rings of Power, but
No, that's okay.
they just sell it better, sell everything better. They sell it better. Like Damon, as much as I didn't like the scene, I just have a feeling that if that was Rings of Power after he had cut down someone and cut someone in half, which would have happened in Rings of Power anyway. Like that's not Lord of the Rings thing. They don't do super gory unless it's orcs. There is a few gory parts. They do throw the Gondorians' heads over the walls of Minas Tirith, which was like pretty dark.
Yeah.
But like Daemon, the more they fight, the dirtier their armor gets, the bloodier their armor gets. Very obvious. It seems obvious, but in the Rings of Power so far, it's like everyone's so clean. Even the men.
She wouldn't even got touched. She wouldn't even got touched if Galadriel did that.
Yeah,
Literally would have been like it would have been like slow motion cut and speed ramp, and then it wouldn't be shot real speed. It would have been kind of like a 300 scene.
Yeah.
No,
Where everything's shot at like 120 frames, like it looks like too smooth. There's no, it just looks trash. But, anyways, I don't like to compare both of them. I think I don't want to jump the gun either because I want to see these shows develop. But as of right now, I'm more impressed with, I would say Rings of Power was just underwhelming, but I kind of knew Rings of Power was going to be underwhelming, and House of the Dragon is about what I thought.
Did you think that? Well, from your opinion for the Rings of Power before seeing it, was it worse when you saw it than what you expected, or was it slightly better than what you expected, but still just kind of underwhelming?
I say underwhelming. It was exactly what I expected.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't any worse. It was just exactly what you expected.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad some people are really enjoying it, and I think that's important for Middle Earth and Tolkien's estate. But I just wish they would have put a little more time and effort into it. And they did in a lot of ways. They obviously put a lot of time and effort into CGI and making it look a certain way. But I just thought the effort was put in the wrong places.
Yeah, and they chose the Second Age as well, and Tolkien has written the least about the Second Age. He's written a lot about the First Age, written about the Third Age, and it kind of seems calculated as to why they chose the Second Age as far as that.
They wanted the most agency they could possibly get.
Yeah, they wanted to have take as much creative liberties as they could. I guess you don't really take creative liberties if there's not much there, but there is information, and there's a whole book on. It's crazy. It's like there's the least amount of knowledge is on the Second Age, but he has, a whole book about, or a lot of a book about the Second Age. Yeah, I don't know.
And the Rings of Power wasn't. I mean, just to clarify, the Rings of Power wasn't actually written by Tolkien. This was just basically they're just writing on the coattails of Tolkien, right?
Essentially, like he didn't write a book called Rings of Power, and it's just it's an adaptation to what he's written about the Second Age. Yeah,
gotcha.
It's an adaptation of what his son has released, unfinished works by him that kind of flesh out Middle Earth.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, anyways, unless you have anything else to say, I was going to wrap up this segment and then we can move over to the matchup segment.
I think I've said what I needed to say, and I've said my truth. So,
yeah, me too. I'm good to go.
Yeah, me too. Matchup time, baby. This is my favorite part.
So, you want me to announce the matchups?
Yeah, dude, you're doing it every time.
Okay. All right. So,
lay it out for us again.
Every single week, we are going to do a hero versus hero matchup and a villain versus villain matchup. What does this mean? We're going to debate who would win in a fight between two heroes and two villains. This is an entire bracket of 32 heroes and villains. The heroes are on one side, the villains on the other. and whenever the last villain is standing, they'll face off against the last hero that is standing to determine who is the most powerful character in all of existence.
Well, no, not necessarily. This isn't. This is strictly kind of films that we think are equivalent, and the universes match up. We're not doing MCU or anything like like DC
And no
superheroes.
superhero
Yeah,
stuff.
no superhero bullshit.
Okay, so this week's matchup is going to be a favorite for probably like all
Oh
of
man,
us. All of us. So this is on the hero side to start us off.
Let's
and
hear it.
I'll say the villain side as well, but we'll talk about the hero side first. Who would win in a fight between Aragorn and Jon Snow? And then the villain side, who would win in a fight between Saruman and Count Dooku?
dude, that's so sick. Which one y'all want to do first, heroes or villains?
We do heroes first on this podcast.
Okay,
Actually, let's do
Hmm.
villains. Let's do villains first this time because the hero one is like it's too saucy. We have to have it like
yeah.
as the
Well, not
finale.
really.
It is. We got. Let's just
Okay,
talk-
all right. So first, okay, so Saruman versus Count Dooku, which is pretty sick. I mean, you laid it out for us. It's two of the same actors.
Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Fighting Christopher Lee.
And let's just do some background on Christopher Lee and how badass he was. The whole character of James Bond was kind of written about this dude. That's how badass he is.
That's it.
He was in the OSS in World War II.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
was.
used to hunt down and kill Nazis.
Dude,
He
he's badass.
yeah, he was I want to
He
say
also collected scalps of Nazis as well.
he was a
I'm pretty sure.
world class fencer, so great swordsman. And then there's a funny story, a cool story that I heard of him was he turned down a marriage proposal from an actual princess. He said, "No, I don't want to marry her," because
What a Chad.
no, he's no beta.
Dude, no, he's a Sigma.
Have you seen this City Boy?
Yeah,
memes?
just let's get to the matchup.
Okay, sorry. All right, let's get into it. Who wants to go first on this one? Because
Saruman and Count Dooku. Okay.
Saruman, the White Wizard of Isengard, versus Count Dooku. he has no title.
the Sith Lord.
The Sith Lord Count Dooku. Who would win in a fight between Saruman and Count Dooku?
And let's remember, these are both when they're in their primes. You know, they're both prime. They're both at the height of their powers.
Yeah, Saruman
And-
before he.
And we're putting them in a coliseum. There's, I would say, about 100 yards circumference. So there's a good enough space for them to do whatever move. Maybe some structures in there so they can, pick them up and use force
You know
and
what?
magic.
You know where they're fighting, Holt? They're fighting on Geonosis. That's where they're fighting.
Just a quick question. How old is Saruman?
Probably like the same age as Gandalf, like thousands of years old.
So, okay. I'm just going to probably say I really want Count Dooku to win, but with how many years of probably experience, I guess kind of a out of context way of putting it, but I guess tactical experience, or at least as a wizard and also as a warrior, he probably has Count Dooku beat on years of experience with that. I think Saruman probably would win in that aspect.
Well, let's slow it down here because we have to understand each of these guys' power.
All right.
And I'll tell you, you might not know as much about Saruman as I do, Nicky. Saruman isn't really necessarily like a powerful. I mean, he beats Gandalf's ass in one scene when he's the White Wizard, but Saruman kind of turns into what he's not meant to be on Middle Earth for. So therefore, Gandalf switches to become White Wizard. That's besides the point. What Saruman is good at is he's good at when he talks and he speaks. It's almost like a Jedi mind trick. He's able to get people to just follow and listen to what he has to say. He can kind of mold your mind just by how he talks and speaks. And I don't think and if you're strong enough in the mind, it's not going to affect you. So I don't think he's going to be able to do that with Gandalf. I don't think he's going to be able to do that with Count Dooku. Just because Count Dooku is also kind of that way. He has, I mean, he's a Sith Lord. It's going to be really hard for you to mold their mind. And I would say it's going to come down to kind of like the last matchup we had with Draco versus, who was the last matchup? Draco
and
Darth Maul.
Darth Maul, yeah. So it's going to be similar to that. If Count Dooku can get close, it's over. I mean, because there's just no way Saruman's going to be able to defend a lightsaber. And I don't know. So
yeah, he can.
Well, yeah.
Because he has telekinesis. He has the Force, dude.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard. But so does Count Dooku. So it's
but let's say
so they both have the Force, but he has no way of combating a freaking lightsaber. What is he going to do?
If Saruman whole purpose was to, as I'm reading, his whole purpose was to basically defeat Sauron. I mean, that would make him a pretty powerful wizard, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he ends up just siding with Sauron, so he was too afraid of Sauron. He thought Sauron was too powerful, so he ended up
which does show a sign of weakness.
Yep.
In Saruman's head, Gandalf never wavered in his belief that good triumphs over evil.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Count Dooku too. I mean, think about it, because
they're very similar. Very similar.
Very good matchup, dude. Because Count Dooku at some point he was
trying to take down.
Jedi, right?
Yeah. He was a Jedi.
He was Qui-Gon's master.
And then he tried to, at one point, if I remember correctly, he I don't know if it was a trick or if he really meant it. He was trying to get Obi-Wan to help him take down, the Sith Lord,
Palpatine.
And basically, Palpatine, to take him down. There was that, and also, I mean, you could also argue that he sided with Palpatine because he was too afraid that Palpatine was so powerful he would one day take over the Jedi Council, and he just sort of joined up with them.
They're very similar characters, actually.
Right. So
and they're both like cold with the shit talking too. It's like,
yeah, dude. Also, Christopher Lee has a way with the way he delivers lines and where his deep rumbling voice. I would have loved it if he was this is a side point, if it was the voice of a Smaug or something, but I mean he had passed away. And he was also already Saruman. But honestly, if it were me, just because I'm going off movie Saruman, but you do have to take into account his what's written about him. I still think, based on what we see, I'm kind of gonna give the edge to Count Dooku. But
dude, you got to understand how powerful Count Dooku. So they're both really powerful. Count Dooku went toe to toe with some of the most powerful Jedi ever. He went toe to toe with Yoda. And was able to he already beat 2 Jedi back to back, and then he goes toe to toe with Yoda and almost takes him to the woodshed. I mean, they're both really, really, because at the beginning, if you remember that battle in the Clone Wars, they're using the Force, and their Force matchups are almost the same, and then their swordsmen or their labor power, or I don't know what you call it, are pretty similar too. So it's like, man, if he's almost as powerful, if not more powerful than the most powerful Jedi, although Anakin ends up defeating him. It's tough, man. I think if Count Dooku can get him close, I think it's over.
We can't even. Excuse me. With the purpose of the whole entire matching up, we wouldn't be able to make it a tie.
No.
Yeah, so it would have to be a really close call.
How brackets work, Nikki.
No, I know that, but I feel like this conversation is going towards this conversation.
Well, it's not up to us. I mean, we can sit here and say it's a tie, but at the end of the day, when we put it in, on our stories and out there, people are going to vote, and we'll put it to a vote. It's gonna be tough. I don't know. I think a lot of people are gonna hop to the Jedi side. I think just because of the whole lightsaber thing. But I'm just thinking about even with Count Dooku's force powers and the Metachlorian count, and I'm sure, obviously, if we're still going off the Metachlorian count, Saruman's going to have a really, really high Metachlorian count too. I don't think Saruman is as mentally equipped, though. I don't know.
Combat equipped, dude. I think combat is a big one, and I think Count Dooku is a much more skilled swordsman. Yeah. Even though Christopher Lee was a skilled swordsman, but
it'd be cool to see Christopher Lee fight Christopher Lee.
yeah. But I think I got to give the edge to, just because he has the force.
Hey, I'm about to give the edge to Christopher Lee in this one
because he has the force, and so he's technically magical in a way, and he has a lightsaber with the skills of a very, very, very skilled swordsman. You kind of have to give the edge to Count Dooku, because like if he gets close, all it takes is like one swipe of the lightsaber goes through Saruman's sword and into his face.
That would be the only way he would win, I think. Yeah. He has to get really close. I mean, we basically had the same sort of conclusion with Draco, and
I think this one would be a lot closer.
Yeah, this one's closer.
No, but the
I think this one's like
close. No. The argument we had was that Darth Maul had to get close to Draco with his lightsaber. He had to get inside, and it's basically the same argument
inside of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, listen. You know what's crazy about this is we're gonna sit here and say these two are like close, but then if we did a matchup like this, Draco versus Saruman, it'd be like, oh, Saruman beat his ass.
Yeah,
you know, it's just
100%.
It is interesting, like just how it's switched a little bit. How just being a wizard and being able to like apparate, especially that's the only reason Draco was able to stay in that matchup, just because of the apparation. But anyways, I'm gonna go with Count Dooku too.
I'm still with Saruman. That's just
okay.
Me.
Cool. All right. Well,
wait, Nicky, you're choosing Saruman?
I am.
Yeah. Wow. The thing is, what's crazy is we're a lot bigger, like Lord of the Rings heads than he is, and we probably side with a lot of Lord of the Rings characters.
I'm gonna choose Count Dooku here.
Yeah. And he's a more Star Wars fan.
I am. And as much as I love Count Dooku, I just think, and this is just, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think the years of experience that he has over Count Dooku.
But I think Count Dooku is, I don't know how, he's not that old, obviously, but I'm sure he's older than you'd imagine.
Okay. So, let's just say for sake of argument that it's just a ridiculous number. It's like, maybe.
I'm looking it up.
I don't know. Maybe he's 76 years old, or if he's like 100 years old, it still wouldn't make a difference. The dude's literally he's literally centuries old.
This is not helping me at all. It says -102.
Count Dooku is 20 years older than Darth Sidious / Emperor Palpatine.
Oh, really?
That's what this says.
Yeah, but
there's
that
no
doesn't
way.
mean.
I thought it would have been the other way around. Wow.
Yeah, I know that does seem.
That's pretty crazy. Okay, so
I'm not getting a straight answer. So, 82 or 83. So he's not super old.
Count Dooku's 83, and Saruman's thousands of years old.
Yeah. That's
yeah. So that probably for me would be the biggest reason why. Just years of battlefield experience. That many.
That's a fair play.
Oh, so what was the next one?
So, let's recap that one. There was.
So,
two votes on Dooku, and
two votes were chosen. The two Lord of the Rings fans chose Count Dooku, and the one
Star Wars fan
chose Saruman. So, as far as our own bracket goes, we had to put Dooku in front of Saruman.
Yeah. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because we want you guys to vote on this. And the heroes matchup, and probably the best matchup so far, is
not really.
It is. It is the best.
It's a cool matchup, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not really close.
Who would win in a fight to the death between Aragorn and Jon Snow. Don't just say a name. Explain why you think this is the way it is. So no, Holt's favorite character is Aragorn. So.
Yeah, but it's not even that's not even that though.
I know,
okay.
I know.
So we have.
I mean, I'm going to agree with you, but
2 characters, which are really some of my, if not my most favorite written characters of all time, that are like the prototypical chosen one characters. Somewhat like you have 2 guys that are like really at first you don't know that they're meant to be king, and as the story pans out, you're like, oh, this is, he's in line, he has royal blood, he's supposed to be king. So they kind of fill into that role, and they're kind of like they're both very, I mean, if you want a stoic character, that's essentially what they are. And they're larger than life in the sense that they defy all reason at times, and they're reckless, but since they're somewhat the chosen one, it seems like everything kind of goes their way in the end, and they're able to prevail whatever odds may be. And they're also nothing. They can't be tempted. There's like it's a weird. They're so virtuous that they can't be tempted either which way. They're just doing what they think is right and doing what's the best for their house or for Middle Earth or for men or whatever it is. So you have 2 very similar characters, 2 very different skill levels as far as that goes. So do you want to get into why I think Aragorn would beat the shit out of Jon Snow?
I'm gonna listen to both of your opinions first. So go ahead.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
So you have Jon Snow, who's 20-something years old, just started fighting, wins a lot of his battle just off pure luck. He's a very good swordsman, comparatively speaking, to a lot of these people because he was highborn and he was able to practice. But he's not on the level of Aragorn, who, other than Gandalf, Galadriel, Elrond, and maybe a few wizards, is the most powerful character in all Lord of the Rings lore. I mean, he has blood in him. So he's Dunedain. So he's also 80-something years old. He's had 60 more years of battle experience. He can take on trolls by himself. Sauron himself is scared of Aragorn. I mean, it's really not a debate here. He can kill 20, 30, 40 orcs at a time by himself. He, turns ghosts or people, or he was able to just turn the undead army and fight ghosts essentially with a sword. I mean, it's just not really comparative. You can't compare it.
So I disagree. No, I'm just kidding. I do agree with you, but I just thinking like it would be cool to see how long Jon Snow would last 1v1 against Aragorn. I don't think it'd be very long. I'd give Jon Snow about 20 seconds tops. But
it sucks though, because I do think Jon Snow would be cool. Like as far as a character goes and how powerful he ends up becoming. If he can wield a dragon though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's a little different now, but I don't know if that's fair because if we're just talking about sword on sword.
Yeah. He doesn't have a dragon. But
yeah, but he can fly one.
Yeah. But he doesn't have one in this fight, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And if you say that Jon Snow gets lucky, he just survives by the skin of his teeth. Who says he can't get lucky with a battle with Aragorn?
Because Aragorn. All right.
Doesn't matter.
So
I'm just taking the opposite side of the argument.
Aragorn gets lucky too. I mean, it's just
this is kind of a cheap argument, but fate is on Aragorn's side, and he was meant to be like the king of Middle Earth, practically.
Yeah.
We're the king of men, and I guess they are going into the era of men in Middle Earth. But that's kind of cheap though, because then you could just be like he wins all the fights because fate's decided.
Well, if Jon Snow can just keep coming back to life,
That's true, but I mean, it's kind of interesting because Aragorn had like you're meant to believe he died when he falls. He took a little tumble off the cliff, and then Jon Snow, he actually dies and comes back. Yeah. But
they're very similar characters. I mean,
they are very similar, but Aragorn was there first, and he's older. He's killed thousands of orcs and a few trolls.
He
literally 1v1
single-handedly.
the troll outside the Black Gate, didn't he? Or did
Well,
who killed
yeah,
the troll?
no,
I can't
and
remember.
how it was originally written, he 1v1 Sauron.
He
Oh,
1v1 Sauron, guys. So it's really Holt is right.
I
This
guess,
was a stupid
you know,
matchup.
I'll
You
go
know
with
what he
you
also
guys.
did? 1v9 versus the Nazgul.
Oh, that is so true. And he threw. Okay. Also, that was the first. Scene Viggo Mortensen ever shot. But I was gonna say like this was a dumb matchup, but really, if you put Jon Snow up against like anyone
Any of
else
these,
in
yeah.
any of these heroes, he'd probably die because of how Game of Thrones is like written. It's grounded in reality as much as it can be, given that it's a fantasy show. But Aragorn is gonna make it. I think he's gonna make it a good few rounds. But
He's. I mean, other than like,
you come to a point where it's like, okay, the other dude has like just ridiculous power. He's not gonna be able to defeat him. But because he's like a 1v1 swordsman kind of type of guy. But Nicky, what are your thoughts? Give us your analysis on this matchup here.
I mean, it's not much of an analysis to be said. I mean, you guys made a very valid argument for it. I mean, if it's going to be more grounded in reality as much as it can be with Jon Snow, and because you like watching that sort of underdog fight, this really powerful character as much as we probably would want to pull for an underdog to win. It's just not a fair comparison. I mean,
the underdog's not winning this one.
No, they're not gonna. As cool as it would be to see him like always survive by the skin of his teeth, it's probably not going to happen here. So I would probably have to say Aragorn in that case.
Yeah, because you have also another character that gets some of the fate and luck on his side too. It just that cancels out, and it's skill versus skill. And I would say 10 times out of 10, Aragorn wins this, and I don't think it's that close. There's another thing I was going to mention. I completely forgot what it was though. Shoot. Anyways, I think that's really all you could do. You want to put Jon Snow in here, but that's the only matchup that makes sense. And I think any other matchup he would get waxed.
If you did a Game of Thrones only bracket, characters against in Game of Thrones, he would go practically all the way. But
the thing is about him is there's swordsmen that are a lot more powerful and better than him, but it seems like he always finds a way.
He drops his sword so much in the show. Like I watched the show like all the way through, like within a month, dude. The amount of time he drops that damn sword, it gets so annoying if you watch it.
You think he'd put a lanyard on it?
Yeah, or like something, dude. Anyway,
I would say Jon Snow has some big nuts too. Like he's not afraid. Yeah. But the thing is, Aragorn probably has bigger nuts. The thing is,
that's so true. Yeah, he has to like fight on a bit much larger scale as well. I get Aragorn. I mean, they do fight the White Walkers, but
throw it into the fire, destroy it. No.
But I'm gonna
and Aragorn's also able to withstand a lot of the temptation of the ring too. So
that's not really a factor in this though. Yeah. But it shows.
Now I'm just sitting here hyping up Aragorn.
You know for a fact though, if John Wolfe had the opportunity to put that ring on. Oh, wait, did I say John Wolfe? I am so sorry. I don't even know why I said that. Jon Snow. I don't know why I said Wolf.
He does have a dire wolf too.
Yeah, we already talked about this. It doesn't matter.
No. But if Jon Snow had the opportunity to put that ring on to fight Aragorn, I mean,
just become invisible. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no.
Give him a handicap. I don't know. Why did I even say John Wolfe? I don't even know why.
Okay, so just to sum up our thoughts, Aragorn would absolutely destroy Jon Snow in a fight. And as far as the villain side goes, I think it's a closer fight. I think Count Dooku escapes that fight with a few scrapes and bruises on him, maybe even a loss of limb. But his limb has regenerated for the next round, so that doesn't count. Nicky.
Well, no, we'll know if he's moving on the next round. We got to let the people decide on this.
Yep.
But for me, he does.
Okay. All right, guys. We appreciate y'all listening and/or watching. For more content, check out our freaking TikToks and Instagrams and YouTubes and Spotify's and Apple Pods.
Thanks, Holt. That's so good.
Yeah, well, as you close this out, I know you like doing that type of shit.
I don't, but If you want to catch us on any other platforms, we are also on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. If you want to listen to us on there.
Zaboomafoo.
Okay. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you later. Nana Boo Boo, stick your head in doo doo.
Peace.